Welcome back to
The Mentors.
This is Vadim.
And Sergey.
And this is a show where we tell stories of ordinary people that became extraordinary entrepreneurs despite lack of experience, money, or connections. You would think that this intro, we use the same recording over and over again every time because it's the same every time. But no, we bring it to you unique with whatever tinge or vocal anomalies that are happening that week. So hopefully this week you like our voices.
And today you'll be hearing part 2 of our conversation with Kevin Yoo. If you haven't heard part 1, you can actually just listen to this part. But part 1, where Kevin Yoo, an industrial designer who ended up starting a brand that is developing a haptic wearable technology first for blind people, but then for all of us. He's developed this company, and he talked about in part 1 about how he went from a designer to an entrepreneur and actually developed that skill set, the entrepreneurial skill set. And in today's part, he's going to talk about how he launched the company, how he ended up raising money for WearWorks, how he went through different iteration to actually bring this hardware product to life, something that's really difficult to do with such an expensive product. And he talks about how he became passionate about the problem of solving the difficulties that blind people have, the visually impaired people have in navigating day-to-day life.
And then also how that ended up stumbling him into this massive opportunity of wearable technology and technology that leverages haptic feedback, and how they're paving the way for that too, because he'll talk about the patents that they're getting and the like. And by the way, Kevin, sweetheart, he paid us an awesome compliment, the best compliment that you can pay to a couple of podcasters like ourselves. When he was leaving the studio, he said, I felt really comfortable with you guys. And I don't know if it was the voices. Probably it was. You guys sound great. And we thought, wow. You already won me over in spite of me. And don't be a surprise.
All right, so without further ado, here's our conversation with Kevin Yoo of WearWorks.
And check him out and the product at Wear.works. That's Wear.works. And if you want to hear more about their Kickstarter, go to Wear.works/Kickstarter.
It sounds to me like you choose what you do based on what interests you or what pull you feel for a problem, right? But talk about now, I think this is a good transition to start talking about WearWorks. You're working on this furniture stuff. You met this guy, Mark. Talk about how you make the transition from thinking about this as an interesting problem to solve to then saying, I'm going to start a business around this, and I might spend the next 10, 15 years of my life doing it. You even said, I want to spend the rest of my life solving this problem. That's a commitment to one problem that most people would hesitate to make. How did that happen?
I think it really just all happened because he spoke about it. I invited him to Pratt to talk, and that was the first initiation, not getting some random person, who is a designer guy who just kind of made it a little bit, but somebody who is actually going through something and could require help in the sense of making something innovative, right? Like, I think a really good way to say this is I was really into automobile design as well, and I was really into prosthetics design in the midst of all this stuff. And I took a prosthetics class, and I also was just drawing cars like constantly. And I was like, why do I draw cars? It doesn't make any sense. It was like really just a practice for me just to keep it up. And then for the prosthetics, I was like, wow, this product sucks. Like at this moment, somebody who can pay $10,000, $30,000 for a prosthetic arm, and it will not be able to hold a pen. So I would literally go up to a guy, he had a $15,000, $20,000 prosthetic arm, and I said, hey, can you hold this pen? And he literally struggled for like 30 minutes trying to like hold his pen, and he's like, hold on. And I was like, wow, this is so crazy. Why? And then the design that I made was a prosthetic hand that could be for architects or drawers or artists who lose their dominant hand. It could hold a pen in a more natural way. But anyways, I think like that's how it really divides in terms of, I guess if you talk about designers in general, I always love the next beautiful car. But the real thing that like I think motivates me personally is the thing that's going to like change people's lives, literally 180 degrees. And I think my father is a really big influencer on this. When I first started this, product, he knew that I was doing it for Marcus. but I kept talking to him about transitioning it into a bigger market strategy. I kept saying, because back then I didn't know the numbers, I didn't know anything, I wasn't a business guy, but I was like, I think, it's going to be too hard to make this for a healthcare product immediately off the bat. It's going to go large, and then it's going to be adapted, and then it's going to go into the healthcare market, and then it's going to be licensed, all this medical approved. And so I kept talking to my dad about wanting a different strategy approach of not doing it for the blind first. And my dad kept looking at me and saying, if you don't do this for the blind and visually impaired, you're going to waste your life. And I keep telling this to my team, I keep telling this to my co-founders, and I keep saying this over and over again, and to our investors as well. I think that's a statement that I like to say because, of course, I do respect my dad and stuff, but it was true. It really purely was true. The way that I converted from furniture making to a wearable device that navigates using vibration for blind people, it's the same thing. Like, furniture making is a luxury. Furniture making is really wow, do you not really have furniture that you want to have another piece of table? It's a luxury item. But moving it over to a technology and an innovation where it could actually change somebody's life 180 degrees, and I'm the person that invited this guy, and to convince myself almost, it convinced everybody else, all the other designers. A lot of people from my batch ended up going into doing very positive things for the world, except for one guy who works at Pepsi. But
sell out.
Yeah, not sell it. But anyways, it was really, I think that's the thing. It hits you. Yeah.
So I can totally see the motivation behind it now. It's getting clear to me. Talk about how you went from wanting to solve this problem to then turning it into a business. How did you assemble the team? How did you decide the first thing you're going to do to make this a self-sustaining venture?
This is, I think, the most challenging. Everybody says this, right? Idea is nothing. Execution is everything. So when the good thing about a designer, I think, is, or especially industrial designer, is you are taught that process of iteration process to begin it. And you can definitely start it on your own to a very far extent. But once it includes manufacturing, once it includes software development, app creation, and all this stuff, because WearWorks, we're doing software and hardware. That's so much money. We're making a map app. At the same time, we're making a wearable device technology. So it's highly costly. So in the beginning, the app was never even produced. I was just going into making, an illusion of it. So Arduino, right? Just plug it in and just put some vibration motors in and just see some codes. Outsource it, whatever you got to do. But in the end, I think the main differentiation was when we first got a check from New York's next top makers, but they're now called FutureWorks. But way back when, they were giving $10,000, very tiny checks, but no equity exchange, to a very small group of entrepreneurs within New York that would, that had interesting ideas, literally concept stage. So I'm in a video. Before we called it the Way Band, we called it Beyond Sight. But people used to say Beyonce. so we changed the name.
Can't hurt marketing.
Yeah, I know, right? But it definitely was a mixed message, right?
Yeah.
But we won this first thing with a group of 6 companies that are doing fantastic right now. But, we were one of the youngest companies, literally a couple months, right? I just started the concept. I just started some iterations. I made some bands. I thought about how we would, navigate you, made a video about it where I'm just walking around and just talking about it, right? So the product doesn't have to fully work and fully flesh out. Literally, we were just representing a very good concept and doing a video production. And then we got the first 10,000, invested the whole thing into making our first prototype, into a more legitimate thing. Just bought all off the shelf things and just made a couple of rigs, and it worked. And I think once that started to work, we were spending just all-nighters, just constantly just developing this thing. Me, Keith, Young, we were just, I think that was the purest part about it. I think I talk about this less and less, and we've gotten, much more into the depths of sales now and marketing and all this stuff. But back then, when we were truly innovating on this technology, and now we have patents on all this, it's we just talked to the lawyer today. It's officially patented in one more month. All the paperwork is done.
Cool.
I'm like, wow, this thing that we did in Jersey back then too. Like in Brooklyn, we were just traveling around to each other's apartments, just tinkering it away in this thing with a $10,000 check. That we're like, oh, our runways literally can be forever if we just don't eat anything. But yeah, I mean, we were just crunching it. But once after that prototype was ready, we were able to go places. We were able to go to BMW, for example, and get into an accelerator, Urban X in Greenpoint. And once after that happened, that's a bigger check, 100,000. But that's also with equity. So meanwhile, producing these prototypes, we were established in a business together. And I think that's something I think I watched a video of Mark Zuckerberg a long time ago about this, but like it never occurred to me until now. He was like, when people were like making stuff in the beginning, they really don't think about the business at all. Like when we're making furniture, we don't think about the business. When we're tinkering around with technology, we don't think about the sales and marketing. We're just like doing it because it's like really innovative and it's like the coolest thing we were doing right now. So once after that was established, once after we had a person, Marcus, who literally taught me everything I know about healthcare, about the blind and visually impaired organizations, politics within it, lobbying, everything, the corruption in it, everything. He just talks about it forever. And once I got that update, and once I started to get understanding of the technology portion of it, and then now I'm as an industrial designer or as a designer in general, you start kind of swerving around and, you know, making it happen. And I think that's when you start creating the team. Like Marcus was my first teammate, and then Young, my best friend from Pratt, he was my teammate. And then Keith, I did an exhibition at the Metropolitan Museum with Keith. He was doing stuff with fashion. I was doing it for 3D printing. He was my team. And so the initial team core was actually quite strong. And I think that was because of our old friendship. But I still say don't do startups with your friends because oh man, after 4 years you start to regret.
right. Sounds like you're making it work. But so when you guys were working on the prototype, going from Brooklyn to Jersey, whatever it is, being resourceful with that 10 grand, were you still a full-time employee or no at this point?
At that time, that was after I quit my job, actually.
Got it.
During the time when I was working, as soon as we got that 10K check, or even before that, actually, about 3 months, 4 months before that check came, I quit my job and I literally just walked out on a Monday, and I just grabbed my stuff and walked out. And then I called up Keith and Young and I said, "Hey guys, let's just do this full time. I think this is like really it."
So were they both not full time anywhere else at this point? And then also, you know, I'm assuming this is before the BMW accelerator where you didn't have that 100K. Like, were you guys all just compensating yourselves with equity and then whatever side projects you had?
At that moment, we didn't establish the company officially yet. It was still in the concept phase. Before the 10K came in, we were literally just all looking for jobs.
Got it.
But luckily, I was actually living in Manhattan with my ex-girlfriend, so I had to pay the bills. Therefore, I had to get a job. Young, he was also applying to a crap ton of jobs. He eventually got a job at Tiffany's and he was working there for a little bit. Keith was also going to interviews and such and such. So we were like doing it multitasking because you can't just pour your entire you could actually like be homeless.
Right.
So,
but you quit your job.
I quit my job once after, and then I moved out of Manhattan. Yeah.
Got it. So you quit your job. I'm assuming you had a little bit of money saved up, maybe, to support yourself.
Just tad. Yeah.
And you moved out of Manhattan, which obviously saves on costs. It just so happened that Keith and Young were also looking for opportunities, and so they were like, you know what, we'll try it out full time with you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And then once after that happened, because we were just applying to everything at that moment, like during that time when I was at the job and those two guys were just applying for jobs. Meanwhile, applying for jobs, we were applying to other things, but still as like a very early stage concept because we were still like not fully established company yet. So we were just applying to everything as like, three dudes just trying to do something cool. Like here's a video of what we made, a little description.
Like accelerator programs.
Exactly. Yeah. We had to get into an accelerator. And I think that was like our entire motive. Yeah. We didn't get into the Urban X, the BMW accelerator off the bat in the first one. And that was the most crushing moments, I think. We were at South by Southwest. We were actually, the 10,000 that was given to us by New York's Next Top Makers, they flew us out to South by Southwest to get our first time exposure. And that was really awesome. But that's when we realized that we didn't get the Urban X Accelerator, and I just went back in the shower and I was like, oh.
How did you get it the second time? Why do you think you got in?
I think the first time, I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot of components to it. I think the first time we literally didn't have anything, and the second time around, I was like, we have to get this no matter what. Like, this is our future. So I went there. I went back to Connecticut. You know what? To save money, actually, after I came back from Manhattan, I went back home to my parents, and I just like locked myself in the house and just like worked on this thing for months. I thought out about many different concepts of products. So we went through iterations of different things, like a cane, for example. I made a fully functioning haptic cane that has ultrasonic sensors on it that detects objects. And I made another one for a chest strap that also is ultrasonic sensor, and a bunch of different iterations of the waistbands. But it was like one that you could hold, one that you could clip on your shirt, the one that you could like put as a belt, a bunch of different iterations of it. Because I just had to like work as fast as I could and just get it all out so that we can pick something and just move with it. So during this time when I was living in Connecticut, it saved me money, and I was just able to create the most, I think, coolest looking thing that I could represent as our company. And I ended up making this little nugget. We call it the Nugget, and I put my fingerprint on it, and it's like painted black, perfectly like, well made design. And then I just put my fingerprint on it, and it looks on white fingerprint, and it looks really cool, right? And that's all I wanted to do. And then when you hold it to the right direction, it stops vibrating. But when you start to move away and you get offset, it begins to vibrate again and get stronger. And that was it. And it wasn't pointing towards anything. It was just random. It would be always random. As soon as you turn it on, it's like a random mode. So it's just like the experience of it. Like, people can really use their imagination. It's just the experience of it had to be really refined. So that's what I was doing for a while.
And so you used that prototype to reapply and show them that you actually had something now?
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Just refining that prototype, but also kind of like the first type brand image. I think that's something that people don't take so harshly early on. I think entrepreneurs, especially in the tech world, they always care about the functionality, and I think that works with software. But as soon as it becomes something that's human facing, something that's like, ergonomic oriented, like wearable device, right? It's all about fashion. It's all about ergonomic. And here's the main thing that I learned. When I went to all the blind organizations and I talked to the individuals, I was like, do you actually care about what color it is? And they're like, we care about what color is more than you care about what the color is, because I want to match things, and I want to match things so much that I will go out of my way to like, do it, because it's the connotation. Like for us, we know we already judge everything as the way it is by seeing things, but a blind person going outside, they really care about the way that they're represented. And they want that to be exactly what they want. So the color like spectrums and the design of it and all this stuff, ergonomic portions, were really heavily detailed because they care a lot about it.
Why do they care about how they're visually represented more than you and I?
Because the description that an artist, Emily, she's now an MFA at Yale. She also worked at the Metropolitan Museum, and she's the first one that saw like what I was doing at the Met, which is like the 3D printed edible. And she found that interesting because it's, how do you understand art in a different way? So what she taught me was really how blind people portray themselves. And it's quite the opposite of what you would expect. Just because you cannot see this thing doesn't mean that you don't care about it. It just means that you care about it more. Because now you need to know where it is. You have to think about it. You have to be attentive to it. Like this cup of water, right? Like we see it, so we know that it's right here. But as soon as you can't, you're going to be thinking about it constantly. So it's a really interesting psychology. The fact that of the matter that I can't see what I'm wearing makes me care about how I place all my clothes based on color, based on everything. So this organizational fashion compares to what I'm wearing to go outside to represent me is a lot more intensified because of the unknown, because you can't sense the judgment. So that's the main reason.
I'm actually curious. So at this point, because you mentioned that obviously you were motivated to work on this product because you wanted to solve problems for the blind and visually impaired, and you were also just inspired by Marcus and his story and everything that you learned about the field. But obviously, as we learned from you in the pre-interview, this is actually a much bigger idea. There are many use cases for people that want to navigate without looking at something, right, through feel and touch. And so when you got into this accelerator, got the funding, were you guys pitching it as a product that had a bunch of different potential market use cases, or was it more niche? And then how did that evolve for you to continue working on the business and get more funding and the like?
So the thing that VCs like are completely different from what entrepreneurs like, completely different from what, exiting investors want, right? But in the end of the day, main thing is it's got to be something very innovative and very cool, because everybody can stand behind that. But I've always known the reason why I started this product that led onto a business. But when I talk about it, it definitely hits the mark when we talk about haptic, when we talk about vibration technology, like haptic technology going into the future and creating a language around it. So the core of the company now is a haptic language company. We're developing the new ways to understand information through touch. And this is something that's very interesting to all of us, and it's an equal playing field for everybody. We all have cell phones, we all have things that vibrate, but it's always been giving you notification feedback for forever. So now, how do you now develop that into something more intense, more educational, more informational? Like, for example, navigation. It's a good place to start. So as soon as you can give a very intuitive, very simple navigation information through haptic feedback, then that's the beginning. People need it, people get it, and they're now using it as a tool. And for blind people, it's 180 degree, right? It's like it's an amazing improvement. It's a humongous amount of stress relief. So because there's no way to do it at this moment, right? A lot of people don't want to go to new places because they don't want to close in their audio and to have street names yelled out to them and the feet, but they don't actually know if they're going the right direction or not. They don't know when to actually make the turn when it comes. So these are like things that are outdated, in our lives. And I think when we talk about haptic design, talk about the future of, vibration technology and how we are going to communicate with our technology without having to constantly look at it or listen to it, that's very exciting to people, and that's very exciting to me as well. So as I mentioned, also I worked at a haptic company for 2 years, and Keith also was very into haptics, and he made a haptic kung fu suit. So we've done stuff with haptics in the past that was directly from both of our interests and from all of our interests. So growing the business to a larger scale, we talk about our core values, which is making the waveBand that's going to navigate and it's going to change the way that blind people are going to get around. But they also know that the main beneficial for all of us will be if we create a new type of technology that communicates information through this new way of understanding it.
So the vision does sound huge now that you mention it. And, I want to ask, you've raised about $500,000 to date. You've been working on this for about 4 years, and you're pre-launch. You're actually about to launch in September, is it? With a Kickstarter campaign? Is there a date set and a funding amount that you're going for?
We're saying September 20th, but I'm going to say end of September.
Okay, good call. Good call. How much are you trying to raise?
We're trying to raise $200,000.
Great.
Yeah. And by the way, if you're interested, go ahead and go to WearWorks, WORKS/Kickstarter, and you can learn more about the Kickstarter.
And so as a pre-launch company for the last couple of years, how do you start to not only de-risk for investors that you're going to have an ability to actually get customers, but also for yourself? How do you, I'm convinced that you're a talented designer. You and your team can design stuff. You and your team have learned how to manufacture stuff. You deeply care about the customer and you understand their needs in a way that probably most people don't. How do you de-risk the business side throughout 4 years before you launch?
Such a good question. This is the main thing that we get asked because we're currently fundraising right now. We're about to raise 1.5. And you have to kind of do that before you launch in order to give yourself a cushion for every kind of mistake you're going to make, especially in the hardware side and software side. When people ask me about commercialization strategies, when they ask me about, how to de-risk, honestly, the only way to do is by going into people directly and getting pre-sales. So we give them the experience because it is hard to talk about haptics, right? We've learned this the hard way over the years. Through our website, if you check it out, we had to use a video production from Discovery Channel because they did an amazing job. They created a person that's going side to side running, and then as they deviate off what we call the virtual corridor, it becomes red, which represents the intensity of the vibration. But see, that's the thing. If you don't feel it, it's really hard to explain what it's doing. People just gonna assume that it's a buzz thing, right? But it's not. It's really an intuitive system we can give to people. We don't even tell them what to do. We just say spin around. That's really the one thing that we do. We say spin around in a circle and stop when you feel you're going the right direction, and that's it. 99% of people pretty much get it right off the bat. Blind, sighted, child, old people, it doesn't matter. And I think that's the kind of simplicity that is going to help us de-risk this product in the market. And I definitely know that part. That's the patent that we have on it, and that's like the thing that we've been really sinking our entire teeth into. So the investors like that. They like the fact that we protected ourselves, that we have a value establishment, and and our evaluation of our company. Once we have that, all we have to now really officialize is getting our sales. And email list conversion is what we're doing. That's what everybody has to do. And we have about 500 something email lists without any marketing or advertisement. And we're just about to hire a PR firm. So I think as soon as we start, going out there, talking about it more, like exactly like this, we're going to start to increase the numbers up. The TED Talk just got released a couple of weeks ago. It's got over 1 million views. Wow. And I think it's been continuously funneling in channels to our website. But really, the de-risking part, and this is what I think about day in, day out now. And great advice for designers. Once you design the thing that you're supposed to design, you're just becoming a salesperson. You just straight up become a sales and a marketing person that is going to sell the thing that you just made. So the good thing is you can do it with an amazing amount of passion. But if, even after the years and years, you can talk about it more than that person, anybody. It really, that's the risking. That's the risking it. Having a good salesperson that is really the founders, and a lot of people always say this, like the founders are the best salespeople. You got to go out there, you got to sell this thing, get people to give you down payments, get your email list up. Because I want to have at least 10,000 people on our email list. I want to have 1,000 units already sold before we click on launch. And then once we do that, the first batch of the manufacturing, I'm actually doing this in South Korea through my uncle's manufacturing facility. That was the luckiest thing that happened throughout the entire thing. And I didn't even know about that until maybe a year ago. So, I think a little bit of luck definitely helps that de-risk everything, and especially in a hardware company. Everybody's like, how's your manufacturing? And I'm like, don't even question it. But I think once you de-risk the manufacturing and de-risk the pre-sales, the rest is kind of should work.
You already have pre-sales, or is that the Kickstarter intent?
This is the Kickstarter intent. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So you spent the last several years essentially building the prototype, refining the product. That's sometimes how long it takes to build hardware. And there's actually a lot of cool stories that unfortunately we won't have time to cover. But you were recently on a podcast called Fix That For You, where you talked about the story where you essentially partnered with a blind marathon runner named Simon Wheatcroft, and you yourself became a runner and I guess trained and ran the New York City Marathon, right?
Yeah, New York City, yeah.
Which is a crazy story. Check out Kevin's appearance on Fix That For You. But you were doing the building for the last few years. Now you're switching your hat, right? And you're becoming a salesperson. Are you okay with that?
It was a struggle in the beginning because I'm still thinking about the little minuscule things that needs to be changed at the very last moment to be a good product. And I'm actually very picky about the things I buy. As you can imagine, like I don't like a lot of things, and I also really respect and love a lot of things. But especially if it's your own product, like whoa, the judgment gets real, and I'm not 100% happy about the product, but that's okay. And that's the thing that I've learned to adapt to. And that's why I can now finally take off the designer hat and say, all right, this is the extent to where I can potentially push it. Now it's up to the manufacturing. Now it's up to all the people that, now you're going to pay them to do it. You just have to trust them. And I'm going to put on my marketing and sales hat and just go out there and talk about this thing with the most passion that I have. And that part is actually easy. And that's what I've actually been doing for so long, because I ran the marathon, right? Like, I know what it's like to push yourself to the extent of like, this is a new technology, this thing failed, this thing succeeded, this thing like had troubles, this thing had problems, and then to go back, assess it, and then to still talk about that transparently, and then to say, hey, I tested out in the craziest place before, and now we made it better, and now this is the thing that you're gonna buy. How exciting is that? I think like that's the reason why I don't mind taking off the hat and talking about it from a more like, this is ready actually for you. This is a time.
So do you plan on then focusing on doing the direct-to-consumer model, or are you interested in potentially partnering with other folks that could resell and distribute for you as well?
Another great question, something that I've been thinking about also day in, day out. Both. And this is usually not the right answer, apparently. VCs and investors don't like when you multitask on your sales strategy. But as I'm heading marketing, I'm thinking about the B2B strategy more as a gift giving. So I want to give 5 waybands, 10 waybands to the organizations that we've already partnered with and beginning to partner with. By doing so, they can now spread the word and teach their people with it. And today I just sent an amazingly long email to Western University in Michigan, and they have the best mobility training groups for blind and training for blind children, and teaching assessments and all this stuff. Like, they literally do, and they were telling me they did exactly what I did. They blindfold themselves and they go out there and they learn about what technologies work, what doesn't work, what methods are efficient, and they make it better. And then they teach kids all the way up to elders on this method. So I think this is a great partnership. Education is a fantastic partnership. It's a B2B strategy, but not necessarily I wanted to use it for sales in the beginning. I'm just like planting a bunch of seeds here. Awareness, exactly. And to also, I immediately say the B2B strategy is I want to use your logos. I want to use your logo, have a link to your website onto our website, and connect us, create a funnel. And once we do that, it's beneficial to both of us, and it also increases trust within our product. And I like the fact that we can, say our waybands are being used and being tested by these organizations within different regions, and I think that's a fantastic thing, and that leads into B2C.
And then lastly, it's clear to me now that the sky's the limit for this technology, for the haptic feedback space in general, and it's clear that you're leading the way there as well. For people that are interested in this space, and specifically for people that might be interested in your product, what are some other use cases then for navigation based on touch? I know you talked about a little bit for bikers and hikers and athletes like that. It might be very useful as well, where you don't want to necessarily look at something to know if you're going in the right direction. You can get feedback by touch. But what are some other use cases for people that might be interested in checking out your product?
Tourists. I think tourists is a huge one. I think we're all tourists, honestly. It's just kind of general living, or urban dwellers, right? That's also city life and whatever. I think tourists is so exciting because when you go to another country, you really don't know where you are, and you don't know any of the street names, and you don't know anything really based on the pronunciation and how it's spelled and sounds and etc. So navigation, I mean, I've been traveling a lot to Europe. I go to Germany, several times a year. I go to, Korea several times. And whenever I go, I immediately look at my phone a lot. I start to use my phone dramatically. And most of the time, I'm looking at the map. So people kind of got used to it. Really, I think that's what it really comes down to. People got really used to it. And in the end of the day, it does its job. However inconvenient it is, you'll get there. Google Maps or Apple Maps, or most likely Google Maps, will get you there. and you trust it. So I think tourism is a big one. I think people just in general, walking around in the night, and when walking around in areas where it's a bit dangerous, whatever. I've been hearing a lot of that feedback. Like, a lot of females actually want to use this in areas where they don't want to be distracted by something. And bikers and of course hikers and stuff like this is a great market. But mainly, I really want this to become just as used as your map on your phone.
actually funny because I was just in Italy traveling there for a wedding, and I was in Florence, and I was basically having lunch in the square near the Duomo, and then I had to make my way to the train station, and of course I'm using navigation, Google Maps, everywhere I go, and my hack for not having to look at my phone is I would look at my phone, I would memorize like 3 or 4 steps ahead, and luckily the Duomo is close to the train station, but I literally be like, all right, you're going to come to a fork, there's 3 different options, you're going to go to the rightmost one, and you're going to go straight, and then you'll see this landmark, and you're going to take a left there, and that way I didn't have to look at the phone. But obviously if I had some, like the Wayband product, for example, or something that was telling me, okay, now go right, but through feedback, I think that would be a lot more useful. So that sounds like there's a lot of applications there, and it also sounds like because you really care about what you're building, Kevin, that you're going to be happy to see people, like you have patents obviously, but you're going to be happy to see other companies and businesses and people that can develop other products using your technology and what you're creating to solve similar problems as well, which is awesome.
Yeah, and to wrap up this interview, one recurring theme to me from one of the early things you said in this interview is obsession. At one point, you were obsessed about winning a competition. At another point, you sort of followed your gut and interest and turned your interest in furniture into this obsession that helped you get this initial venture business off the ground. And then you became obsessed about a problem that you really wanted to solve for somebody or for a population, and you've spent the last 4 years doing it. And I think the only reason why you've had the success that you've had, why you've been able to raise funding, get a team around it, get press, New York Times, Discovery Channel, all these things that you've been able to do is because of this consistent effort based on this obsession of solving this problem. And I think that's why you're going to continue to be successful with this venture.
Kevin, thank you so much for coming on the show. If you're listening and you're interested in learning more about the Wayband or WearWorks as a brand, go to wear.works. That's WEAR.works. And if you're interested in getting in early on this new product, then go to wear.works/Kickstarter. And of course, we'll provide the link in the show notes in the description as well. Kevin, thanks so much for coming on the show. Very inspiring story for us and obviously our audience as well.
Thank you so much. That was a pleasure.